Hey all you dudes and dudettes, this is Val here with another Dungeon Hunter Champions video. In today's video, we're going to talk about co-op. Alright, so I did a quick overview when co-op came out, but there is some things now that we've had it for a while I do want to go over. And hopefully this will help make everyone's co-op experience a little better and alleviate some of the frustrations a lot of us have when using the queue to do co-op. So let's just jump right in and start talking. So the first thing that's very important I want everyone to know is you really should look at the event boss information. So the first thing right here says all elements except fire have an elemental disadvantage. This is extremely important to note. Don't just look at this and say, well, I'm going to bring my Alia to the current one, or you can bring your Alia here because this is the time. But don't say, well, I'm going to bring my Dr. Synapse. My Dr. Synapse is awesome. He's going to do it. Oh, you know what? I actually have a super awesome Kendrick. He's the same element. It's going to be fine. No worries. He's level 60. No. Do not do that. The reason why is because this isn't just more damage you're taking. Everything else that applies to elemental disadvantage applies to this. That means reduced chance to land debuffs, reduced resistance on your part, everything. And that applies to everything in this zone. You're going to have that elemental disadvantage, not just the boss. Make sure when you go here, you are only bringing the appropriate unit. And that's going to be a unit that has advantage, elemental advantage over the current boss. Anything else will be at a disadvantage with everything that goes through there. So just don't, even if it is 60, just don't do it. It's not a good idea. Now the second important one in the list here, gains damage negation, which completely blocks damage once for each stack. This is constantly being refilled on the boss. Pay attention to what the stacks are on the boss and make sure you are attacking the boss. Once this is down, that is when you want to ult. Don't ult before that because basically you're only removing stacks. And you can remove stacks quite simply by just attacking it with your normal attack. And that will remove these, which will allow you to use your skill 2 and skill 3 to get in that really good damage. These are two very important things that you want to pay attention to on the boss, right? Now, for detailed information, if you click on the boss info, it'll tell you what everything does. Now, different bosses have different gimmicks. So you want to make sure that you're going through and you're reading these because they are important. Now, one I noticed that people are not reading that is super important, and I hate to say this, but as of now, all of the bosses we have seen are immune to all this. One of them is super important. If you look at immunities, Ball Dragger is immune to ongoing damage, stun, fear, silence, blind, and slow. Why this is important? The very first one there, ongoing damage. That means all Snake Ladies, that means Dodgy, that means all those heavy OGD units are absolutely worthless here. Because their main ability, their main drawing point, they cannot do. So regardless, if you bring the element that has an elemental advantage over Baldragor, doesn't matter, they are still not going to drop their OGD. So just don't bring them. I mean, you're not really contributing anything to the group if you are bringing a unit that is dependent on OGD. Now, some people have said, well, Dr. Synapse, because I like to run him on the appropriate Baldragor boss, does drop OGD. Now, his main attraction is not OGD, though. OGD only drops from him if he removes a buff. He has to remove a buff to do it. All his other abilities have nothing to do with OGD, just the one, so he is perfectly viable to bring there. Same with Kendrick. Kendrick does drop OGD on skill 1, but that is not Kendrick's main draw. He has a buff on skill 2, and then he has ignore defense on skill 3. Both of those are still excellent for Baldragor, even though his skill 1 does have an ability that is not going to be used. Those units are still viable, but Snake Ladies, even Caroline, she does do a lot of damage on her OGD. Her only saving grace why you might bring her here is that she is tanky, so if people die, you can be the one that reses them all because you're able to withstand the hits and maybe take a few extra blights or two. But that's really kind of the only exception to that rule. So now, Another thing, I know I've seen this a lot. In Epic, I know Epic is the lower tier one. If you are going to bring a 5-star, make sure it's geared. Don't bring a naked 5-star into this, even if it is the element with the elemental advantage over that week's Vulture board. The reason why is you're going to still be squishy, you are going to die, and your team is going to spend more time rezzing you than they are doing damage to the boss. Now, I've seen this happen many times in my runs here, and that is, we'll bring a solid elemental advantage units to the boss that are level 60, 6-star max, and then someone will bring a level 60 that's awesome, like Alia or something like that, to it, but it won't have the elemental advantage, which means it's going to be at an elemental disadvantage. What happens is you're going to die quicker than anyone, and we're going to spend more time rezzing you than doing damage to the boss, which means this ability 2 here, this damage negation, is just going to keep stacking up while we're trying to res you. Now, if someone dies while trying to res you, then that third person needs to try to res you both without dying himself. All the whole time you're building stacks of blight, the boss is building stacks of negation. So to those who do go in there and you have 2 units that are ready to go, and you have that third person that, you know, brought the wrong unit and they are dying, do not res them. It is not worth your time to res them, regardless of what, oh my god, what the heck applesauce unit they brought. Now, I've seen Kai Wenji be worth the res. Her heals are pretty good. Starstruck still applies to the boss, if I'm not mistaken. So it was worth our time to res her. She did only die the once. But I'm talking to those squishy DPS units that are awesome, like BMs. So if someone brings the incorrect BM here, and you notice it's dying, stop resing it. You are going to wipe, because as you're resing it, it's building more damage negation stacks. You're building more blight stacks. You're losing stacks. And it's just, it's nasty. It's nasty. So don't do it. Now, if you are an Epic and you want to bring a 5-star unit, as long as it has elemental advantage and it is geared, that unit is going to be fine. It will be 100% fine. It just has to be geared. And geared, in my mind, is all gear slots are plus 12 at minimum, and they are relevant stats to whatever the unit is. So if it's a tanky unit, you know, you've got HP and whatever else you need on there, and it's not some kind of crazy build like you have Kai Wenji and it's on Mortal Keen. It's like why, right? So you want to make sure that you have the appropriate gear, max level 50, with at least plus 12 on all your gear before going into Epic. Because if not, you're just going to make everyone else have a bad time. They're going to have to spend time rezzing you, or they're just going to ignore you, and then you're going to feel like, oh, well, this wasn't worth it. Or you're going to get carried, and then people are just going to see you come in a group and be like, well, I'm not going to group with this guy. I've grouped with him before. I know he doesn't bring in geared units. And you don't want that. You don't want to get that kind of rep there. Now, when we talk about Legend and we talk about Nightmare, there is no exception if you are going to do those, okay? So I can't speak to Nightmare, but I can speak to Legend. If you are going to do those, 6-star max, no exceptions, and it must have elemental advantage. If you are in a group or you're putting together a group with friends, make sure you have everything covered with the appropriate element. That person that doesn't even at 6-star max with, oh my god, what the heck, barbecue sauce, amazing gear, it is still going to die a lot, which means you're going to have to res, which means the boss is going to build more damage negation stacks, which means you're going to build more blight stacks, and you're going to have a really bad time. Now, what I recommend doing if you are going into Legend, while not required, is if you have either hollowed or withered gear, that you equip it appropriately on your units, because it is going to help you significantly. Being able to lose stacks and being able to apply stacks is a really big deal there. I'm assuming on Nightmare it is a foregone conclusion that everybody needs at least one of those sets. Like I said, I don't have experience in Nightmare, so I can't really speak to it, but in Legend I can tell you that it is helpful. Even if you do get lower level withering or blighted gear, it is still worth using it, because you're still removing buffs. Because the stats you lose aren't really going to matter compared to what you gain as far as debuffing the boss and keeping you from being debuffed yourself. That's going to really help you. Remember, every stack of blighted on you is 1%, so all the stats that matter the most, the more of those you can keep up remove, the better off that you will be. So remember, Legend, 6-star, appropriate element, no exception. All must be geared, preferably have plus 15 in the key slots, which is going to be shoulder, gloves, and bracer. because that's just going to make everyone's life that much easier. Now, here's the hard part. So we talked about what you need to survive in each. I'm sorry I don't have much to contribute to Nightmare. But the hard part is this right here. And I'm talking about chat. Chat has made it pretty difficult to be able to get a group together. I know for me, when I talk in guild, it doesn't always show up. Sometimes when I talk in global, it doesn't show up. And even when I'm in a co-op raid, sometimes I don't get the lobby button, sometimes I do, which will help so you can communicate and say, hey, you know, you need to bring a different unit, or we're going to kick you, or whatever it may be. So you can communicate. Communication is very important. So to combat that, what I'd recommend doing is using the Discord chat. There is a co-op section in the Dungeon Hunter Champion, and you can form your groups there. Also, if your guild has a Discord, you can use that as well. I really hate recommending things outside of the game because not everyone wants to run Discord, not everyone wants to be on Discord, but it does help put groups together, because as of right now, it is hard to depend on global, guild, and lobby chat to get that done. This honestly is the hardest part of co-op, getting a group together. We're further limited because we just can't click on a name like this and do an invite when in the lobby, which would really help. You have to actually make them a friend, wait till they accept it, come in, come back into co-op, then invite them. And if you do that so many times, you're constantly cycling and dropping friends, right? So hopefully at some point they add where you can just click on their portrait here, get invite to group, and you know, regardless if they're a friend or not, and then get the job done. I mean, that's the most ideal method, so you're not just cycling people out. The guild chat, at least for me, needs to be resolved, because what I like to do is go in there, look at the guild list, because since you can invite your guildies right from there and say, hey guys, who's up, and I can toss in invites. So that part is really good, but they really got to make sure that chat is reliable for that to happen. As of right now, it's not, and that's why I'm recommending third-party tools for it. I'm sorry, I just don't see any other way to have a really stable experience in co-op without involving a third party. But Discord is great. I'm on Discord. I don't talk as often. I do lurk a lot and absorb what the community is saying. But there is channels there for co-op, for 5v5, and I highly recommend that you take advantage of those for a successful co-op experience. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you found it helpful, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down below. And as always, all you dudes and dudettes out there, stay frosty.